The desert sky burned with the color of dying embers as Tala Redhawk, proud daughter of the Chiricoa Apache, guided her small scouting party across the jagged ridgeline. Evening winds curled around the canyon walls, carrying the scent of dust and creosote. Tala rode at the front, her braids whipping behind her like black ribbons of war, her obsidian eyes scanning the horizon with a warrior's vigilance. They had set out before sunrise, tracking strange hoofprints and wagon marks that did not belong on Apache land. The trail led toward the canyon, too quiet, too still. Even the hawks circled high as if warning her to turn back. Tala felt the unease twisting in her chest, but she pushed forward. Her people depended on her. Then the world erupted. A rifle cracked like thunder from the cliffs opposite them. Another shot followed, then another, echoes exploding through the ridge. The ambush was swift and merciless. Tala's horse reared, screaming. Warriors dove for cover behind rocks as bullets showered down from hidden shooters above. Tala leaped from her horse, rolling behind a cluster of boulders. Arrows already in her hand. She fired upward with deadly precision, her bow bending like a living creature. Her second arrow struck a glint of metal, silencing one rifle. She shouted for her warriors to fall back, but the enemy was prepared. A fuse hissed. Dynamite! Tala turned just as a blast tore the ridge beneath her. The ground bucked violently, rocks and dust lifting into the air as if the earth itself had exploded. She felt herself thrown backward, weightless, helpless before gravity seized her and dragged her into the yawning canyon. She slammed into a slope of jagged stone, tumbling, rolling, striking sharp edges that ripped flesh and shattered bone. The world blurred into fragments of sky and dust in agony. When she finally came to rest at the canyon bottom, the silence was suffocating. Her legs were trapped beneath heavy boulders, twisted at unnatural angles. Pain radiated up her spine like fire. She tried to move. She couldn't, she called out, but her voice was a cracked whisper lost in the wind. Above her, shadows moved along the ridge. Her tribe. Tala, her sister's voice called faintly. Warriors peered down, but the drop was steep. The rocks unstable, the danger too great. Minutes passed. Then her father's voice, heavy and broken. And she's gone. No one survives that fall. We must leave. Tala watched them turn away, left for dead, but not yet defeated. Dusk settled over the desert like a tired sigh, stretching long purple shadows across the canyon floor. Caleb Boone, a weather-worn cowboy with dust on his boots and a week-old ache in his shoulders, guided his Mustang along the narrow trail winding between the cliffs. He had traded pelts in the distant town of Dragon, hoping to reach his cabin before nightfall. The desert could be unforgiving after dark rattlesnakes, wolves, and the kind of cold that bit straight through bone. But Caleb moved with the calm steadiness of a man who had lived too long in wild places. He trusted his horse, trusted the land, trusted the silence. Until something broke that silence. A faint glimmer caught his eye, something out of place, shimmering weakly between two fallen rocks. At first he thought it might be sunlight catching quartz, but the sun was nearly gone. The light shouldn't have been there. He pulled the reins. Easy, Buck. The Mustang snorted uneasy. Caleb dismounted, boots crunching softly over the sandy ground. He approached the glinting object, pushing aside debris, and froze. A strip of beadwork. Apache beadwork. Bright red, yellow, and black, handcrafted and unmistakably tribal. His breath tightened. Apache land was dangerous for outsiders. Should have left immediately. But then he saw her. A body, a woman lying half buried under rocks and dust. Her skin was pale beneath streaks of dried blood. Her braids tangled, her chest rising only slightly. Caleb knelt, brushing dirt from her face. Her eyes snapped open. Dark, sharp, filled with fury and fear. She tried to reach for the knife at her hip, but the movement died halfway as her arm collapsed. Pain rippled across her features, but her spirit, there was nothing weak about it. Stay back, she rasped, in a voice roughened by thirst and agony. Caleb raised both hands calmly. Easy now. I'm not here to hurt you. She swallowed hard. Leave. Me, my legs, they are gone. Caleb shifted his gaze downward and felt his stomach twist. Her legs were crushed beneath boulders, mangled beyond saving. Yet she was still alive. Still fighting. He hesitated only a heartbeat. Hell, he muttered under his breath. I reckon you're tougher than most men I know. With determined strength, he pushed, pulled, and strained until he moved the rocks away. She bit down on her lips so hard it bled, refusing to scream. He wrapped her in his coat, lifted her carefully into his arms, and placed her on his horse. The desert night was closing in, cold and merciless. But Caleb Boone rode toward home, carrying a warrior who refused to let death take her. The days after Caleb brought Tala to his cabin blurred together in a haze of fever, pain, and stubborn survival. His cabin was a smaller single-room shelter built of pine logs, perched beside a narrow creek, but to Tala, it felt like a place suspended between life and death. the scent of smoke from the stone fireplace mixed with boiling herbs. And every time she opened her eyes, she found the cowboy's steady silhouette somewhere nearby. Caleb worked tirelessly. He cleaned her wounds with trembling hands, knowing infection could take her faster than any bullet. He brewed teas from desert plants, spoon-feeding her when she couldn't hold the cup herself, at night when she cried out in her fevered dreams. He was there, calm, silent, patient, but he could not save her legs. By the 5th day, the swelling had turned black, the skin cold and lifeless. Tala knew before he said a word. The truth lay heavy in the space between them. Caleb's voice cracked. "If I don't take him, the road'll take you." A warrior's dignity was carved into her bones, yet the words still felt like a blade cutting through her chest. She nodded once, jaw clenched, eyes shining, not with weakness, but with the grief of a storm breaking. The amputation was brutal. Caleb nearly fainted twice. Tala refused to scream, biting down on a strip of leather until it bled. When it was done, she lay shaking, drenched in sweat, her spirit teetering on the edge of a cliff far higher than the one she fell from. For days she didn't speak. One morning, when Caleb offered her water, she finally whispered, "You should have let me die." Caleb sat beside her, rubbing the scar on his knuckles. "To deny you the chance to prove every fool wrong? Not my style." That simple, honest, cracked something inside her. Not her pride, not her strength, but the wall between despair and defiance. From then on, she fought. She learned to sit up unaided, her arms trembling violently at first. She practiced lifting herself from the floor to the bed using only her upper body. Each success, however small, felt like a victory wrestled from the jaws of fate. Caleb carved her a pair of wooden forearm crutches and later crafted crude thigh support. Prosthetics from leather, iron, and shaped wood. The first time she strapped him on, she fell instantly. She cursed him, cursed herself, cursed the sky. But she stood again. She kept standing. And the day she finally rose, sweat-drenched, trembling but upright, Caleb steadied her shoulders, pride shining in his tired eyes. Tala lifted her chin. Her voice was a low flame. "I am still Apache. I am still a warrior." The morning sun painted the canyon gold as Tala, Red Hawk, balanced on her wooden supports, gripping her carved staff with blistered hands. Each breath formed clouds of determination in the cool desert air. She swung the staff in sharp arc strikes, blocks, turns, each movement echoing the warrior she had been, and the one she was becoming again. From a distance, Caleb watched quietly. He'd learned not to interrupt her training. Tala fought every sunrise as if trying to reclaim pieces of herself, scattered across the desert floor. Sweat dripped down her temples, tracing paths over the scars on her cheeks. Her arms had grown corded with strength, her balance more sure each day. Then the wind shifted. Tala froze, a faint tremor in the earth. Soft hoofbeats. Murmured voices carried from the ridge above the canyon. Her pulse quickened. She knew those sounds. She had grown up on them. Caleb stepped to her side. "Riders?" "Yes," she whispered, gripping her staff tighter. "Apache riders. My people." Moments later, silhouettes appeared on the ridge warriors on horseback. Feathers glinting, faces shadowed against the rising sun. At the front rode Tala's sister Lena, her braids streaked with red ochre. Behind her came the elders, warriors, and finally their father, Chief Red Hawk, his age heavy on his shoulders. They halted as they saw the figure below Tala, standing upright on wooden legs, a staff across her body, fire in her eyes. A gasp broke across the ridge. "Tala," her sister cried, voice cracking with disbelief. Tala said nothing at first. She simply held their gaze, refusing to shrink beneath their shock or guilt. The tribe rode down carefully, horses weaving through the canyon stones. When they reached the bottom, Lena dismounted first, running toward her before stopping short, afraid to touch, afraid to break. "Tala, we thought the spirits had taken you." "You left me," Tala said, her voice steady, not cruel but unflinchingly honest. "You looked down from the ridge. You decided my life for me." Her father stepped forward, leaning heavily on his cane, his weathered eyes filled with a sorrow that seemed to age him even more. "Sure? I carry that shame every day." His voice broke. "It was I who said we must go." He bowed his head. "I was wrong." Silence filled the canyon like thick smoke. Even the horses seemed to hold their breath. Caleb stayed behind Tala, giving her space, watching the moment unfold with quiet respect. Tala's gaze flickered between her father, her sister. The warriors then back to Caleb, the man who had carried her, saved her, rebuilt her. They all waited for her verdict. Finally, she lifted her chin. "I lived," she said. "Not because you saved me, but because I refused to die." She paused, letting the truth settle. "And because a stranger showed more courage than my own blood." Lena stepped forward slowly, tears streaking dust down her cheeks. "Tala, will you come home?" Tala breathed deeply, a kind of breath a warrior takes.